The first time I saw Elijah, he was standing in the pouring rain outside a gas station, holding an umbrella over a stray cat. He didn't notice me at first, soaked to the bone with grocery bags hanging from my arms, my hoodie clinging to every bone of my frame. I must have looked pathetic, or invisible, the way I usually did. Elijah changed everything. I wasn't used to kindness. Growing up in a house where silence screamed louder than any slap, I learned early on how to shrink myself. My mom checked out when I was 12, and my father had always been more ghost than man. I spent most of my teen years juggling school and overnight shifts at a convenience store. My apartment now, if you could call it that, had more roaches than furniture, and the upstairs neighbors fought like demons, but I was surviving, just barely. Then Elijah walked into my life with his crooked smile and impossibly warm eyes, and for the first time, I thought maybe I didn't have to be in survival mode forever. He came from a different world. His family wasn't rich, but they were close, loving, loud, everything mine wasn't. His mother always had a pot of stew ready. His father taught guitar lessons in the garage, and then there was Ava, his younger sister. Quiet, watchful, with eyes that saw through everything. I liked Ava immediately, though something about her unnerved me. She had this way of being in the room without being in the room, like she could hear thoughts you didn't say out loud. It started small. Lights flickering when I entered Elijah's house. Chimes ringing in still air. The same dream every night, standing in a foggy forest with someone whispering my name just out of sight. At first I brushed it off. I thought maybe it was stress. Maybe I was just tired, or haunted by old trauma I hadn't unpacked. But then Ava started watching me differently. She'd stare when she thought I wasn't looking. Not with suspicion, with concern, or pity, or fear. One night after a family dinner, Ava caught me alone in the hallway. The others were cleaning up, laughing in the kitchen. She didn't smile. "You've seen them, haven't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I froze. "Seen what?" She tilted her head, studying me. "The shadows, in the corners when you think you're alone." A chill climbed my spine. "Look, Ava, I don't know what they follow people like us, people with wounds. The more you pretend they're not there, the stronger they get." I laughed nervously, trying to shake it off, but my hands were clammy. "I'm just tired. I've been having weird dreams. That's all." She didn't back down. "You dream of the forest, don't you? Fog, voices, trees so tall you can't see the sky." I dropped the plate in my hand. It shattered on the hard wood. Elijah rushed over. "Hey, you okay?" I nodded quickly. Too quickly. "Yeah, just clumsy." But I wasn't okay. Because how could she know that? From that night on, things escalated. I'd find objects in my apartment moved, always slightly. A mirror that used to face the bed now angled toward the window. A photograph flipped upside down. Whispers at 3:17 a.m., just before the lights buzzed and blinked out for 2 full minutes. I stopped sleeping. I stopped eating. I confided in Elijah, but he looked worried. Not because he believed me, but because he thought I was losing my mind. Only Ava understood. We started meeting secretly. At the library, the park. She told me about the veil, how some people were born thinner, easier to reach through. How trauma could rip holes in a person's soul, making them easier prey. How they feed off fear, how most people never even know they're being drained. "I've kept them away from Elijah," she told me once. "But I can't protect both of you." One evening, I came home to find a symbol scratched into my front door, jagged, almost carved, like claws. I called Ava, panicked. She didn't answer. The next morning, Elijah texted me. "Ava's gone." My stomach dropped. I called, heart racing. "Gone? What did that even mean?" He replied. "She left a note. It just said, 'Don't trust her until she remembers who she is.'" "Her? Who?" I stared at the screen, the blood draining from my face. Then I looked in the mirror, and behind me, in the reflection, something moved. It was raining the day my mother disappeared. Not in the poetic, she walked out kind of way. No, she simply vanished. One moment she was folding laundry, humming that old Fleetwood Mac song she loved. The next, I turned around to ask her something, and she was gone. The dryer kept spinning. The clothes were still warm, but the hum had stopped. I was 7 years old, and no one believed me. They said she ran off. That she left me with a father who never wanted kids, a man whose idea of parenting was locking the door and letting the silence raise me. But I remember the way the light flickered right before it happened, the way the air crackled, the way her eyes widened. Not with fear, but with recognition. Like she saw something coming for her. Like she knew it was too late. Ever since that day, I've been searching. Not in the obvious ways. I never posted flyers or filed reports. What good would it do? They all thought she abandoned me. But I looked in the cracks, in shadows. In half-remembered dreams, I stayed up until 4 a.m. reading about vanishing symbols and alternate realities. The things people whispered about but never admitted to believing. And when I met Elijah, I thought I could finally stop. Stop chasing ghosts. Stop believing that the world could rip people out of your life without explanation. But then his sister looked me in the eyes and said, "You're not crazy, you're just open," and everything I'd buried came rushing back. I didn't grow up with birthday cakes or bedtime stories. My childhood smelled like mildew, sounded like slammed doors, and felt like walking on eggshells every day. After my mom vanished, I stopped being a daughter and became a burden. That's what my father called me, a burden. Like I was an extra bag he hadn't packed for, something that threw off the balance of his already disappointing life. We lived in a crumbling duplex on the edge of a dying town. The kind of place where dreams rot on rusted fences and neighbors peek through curtains but never open their doors. My father worked odd jobs. Construction, sometimes security. When he wasn't drinking himself into a stupor, or passed out on the couch with the TV blaring late-night poker. By the time I was 9, I was making my own meals. Cheap instant noodles, cereal for dinner. Whatever I could scrounge from the discount bin. By 13, I figured out how to lie about my age so I could clean motel rooms on weekends. At 15, I learned how to stay invisible. To teachers, to cops, to the kind of men who looked at me too long on the bus. No one was coming to save me. I knew that early. There's a particular kind of pain in being forgotten while you're still alive. People think heartbreak comes from dramatic endings, breakups, betrayals, funerals, but for me it came quietly, from being ignored, from shouting inside and realizing no one was even listening to begin with. Still, I survived. Every morning, I woke up to the same ceiling stain shaped like a teardrop. I made coffee with powdered creamer, rubbed sleep from my eyes, and went to a job I hated, cashier at a 24-hour corner store, where the fluorescent lights buzzed like hornets and the customers barely looked at me. But at least I was earning my rent, even if it meant barely scraping by. I told myself that surviving was enough, that if I could just get through the next week or the next shift, I'd eventually find something better. Maybe go back to school. Maybe save up and leave town. Maybe find someone who actually saw me. Then Elijah walked in one night just before my shift ended. He was buying gum and a cherry soda, and he smiled like he had known me in another life, and I hated that I smiled back. Because hope was dangerous. Hope made you believe you could have more than survival. Hope reminded you that you once had a mother who hummed Fleetwood Mac and folded warm laundry on rainy days. But I smiled anyway, and that one smile unraveled everything. At first it was easy to ignore. A creak in the hallway after midnight. The soft sound of humming, so faint it could have been the wind. I lived alone. No roommates, no pets, but I still chalked it up to the old building. Pipes groaned. The fridge made weird noises. It wasn't new. Then I started waking up at 3:17 a.m. every night. Always 3:17. Like someone flipped a switch inside me. I'd shoot up in bed, heart pounding, room ice cold, even when it wasn't winter. At first I blamed anxiety. Trauma does that. It frays you, makes you sensitive to every little sound, every creak and echo. I'd lie there still as stone, listening to the silence stretch out around me, heavy, too heavy, until I finally fell asleep again. But the dreams, they were harder to shake. It started with fog, thick, white, almost glowing. I'd be standing barefoot in a forest, the trees unnaturally tall, their branches curling like twisted hands overhead. I couldn't see the sky, only the mist and the endless space between trunks, and always a voice. Not yelling, not whispering, just calling. Coo. Soft and slow, dragging my name through the air like a song half remembered from childhood. I never saw who it was. I'd try to move toward the sound, but the forest would shift. The ground beneath my feet would ripple like water, and shadows would crawl at the edge of my vision. Sometimes I'd wake up with dirt under my fingernails, or the smell of pine on my pillow. I started feeling watched, not in a paranoid, maybe I'm losing it kind of way. It was more specific, focused, like something was waiting for me to see it. I'd be walking down the street and feel someone behind me, only to turn around and find no one there. I'd see flashes and reflections, not faces exactly but outlines, flickers. Once I saw movement in the mirror behind me, something tall, just out of frame. But when I spun around, the room was empty. Lights would flicker just for a second when I entered a room. My phone would glitch, apps opening on their own. A song playing that I hadn't selected. Landslide by Fleetwood Mac. The same song my mom used to hum the day she disappeared. It happened 3 times before I deleted the app entirely. One night I came home and found my apartment door slightly ajar. I hadn't left it that way. I was sure of it. But nothing was missing. Not a single drawer was disturbed. Only the mirror in my bathroom had been turned, angled slightly upward, so it no longer reflected my face directly. Just the ceiling behind me. That night I dreamed I was lying in my bed completely still, only I wasn't alone. Something was sitting in the corner. I couldn't see it, but I felt its eyes. Hot, sharp. Not angry, curious, hungry. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. I woke up drenched in sweat, my blanket shoved halfway across the room. For a while I convinced myself I was unraveling, that this was trauma surfacing after years of being buried. My therapist used to tell me that sometimes the mind breaks open to let the pain out. Maybe that's all this was. But then Ava, Elijah's sister, looked at me over dinner one night and said casually, as if commenting on the weather, "You've been dreaming of the trees, haven't you?" My fork paused halfway to my mouth. "What trees?" She smiled softly, but it didn't reach her eyes. "The ones that breathe when you're not looking. If it weren't for Grace, I might have already lost my mind." She was the only real friend I had left from high school. A sarcastic, sharp-eyed barista who somehow always smelled like cinnamon, and who never took anyone's crap, including mine. We drifted apart after graduation, but last year I ran into her by accident at the pharmacy. She was in the allergy aisle, scowling at a box of overpriced nasal spray. I was there picking up discount cough drops and praying my debit card wouldn't decline. She looked up, blinked once, and said, "Damn, you still breathe?" That was how it started again, just like that. We began meeting once a week, usually at her tiny apartment above the coffee shop where she worked. It wasn't much, but it was warm and smelled like cloves and old books. She had a cat named Wednesday that hated everyone, a patchwork couch she rescued from the curb, and a habit of talking with her mouth full when she got too excited. Grace didn't ask questions I wasn't ready to answer. She never pushed about my past or Elijah or the shadows under my eyes. But she noticed. "You were sleepwalking through your days, babe," she said one afternoon, handing me a chipped mug filled with strong coffee. "Even your bones look tired." I sighed and wrapped both hands around the warmth. "Yeah, I've been having weird dreams. Weird like floating teeth. Weird like prophetic visions of the apocalypse. Weird." I managed a weak smile. "Weird like trees that whisper and mirrors that lie." She paused just for a moment, then sat beside me, pulling her legs up under her like a child. "You ever hear of liminal spaces?" she asked, brushing her bangs out of her face. Places between places, gas stations at 3 a.m., empty malls, old motels, dream forests, places where reality thins out. I looked at her. She sipped her coffee. "My grandma was Navajo. Used to say spirits move freely through places that don't belong to anyone. Said grief opens doors. Trauma, too." Grace didn't say that to scare me. She said it like she was laying puzzle pieces on the floor, letting me see the shape without forcing the picture. I didn't respond right away. Just stared into the steam rising from my mug. "It's not just dreams anymore," I whispered. "Things move in my apartment. I wake up with bruises I can't explain, and Ava, she knows things she shouldn't." Grace nodded slowly. "Then you're not crazy." Those 4 words nearly broke me, because until then, no one, not even Elijah, had said that. He just looked at me with sympathy, with concern, like I might be unraveling in front of him. But Grace, she believed me. And more than that, she stayed, even as the stories got stranger. Even as I began describing things that couldn't be real. Voices that called from under the floorboards, pages in my notebook written in handwriting that wasn't mine. Moments where time seemed to skip like a scratched DVD. She never flinched. Instead, she started researching. Printouts, podcasts, books about the thin places. She even tried recording my sleep once, just to see if anything strange happened. I've seen weirder stuff? She'd shrug. This world's more stitched together than people think. Doesn't take much for the seams to rip. There were nights I sat in her apartment until dawn, afraid to go home. She let me. No questions. Just quiet music, soft blankets, and a shared silence that felt more like safety than anything I'd ever known. Grace reminded me I was still tethered to something real. That even when the world blurred at the edges, there were people who didn't let go. And for a while, that was enough. But whatever was watching me, it was getting closer. It happened on a Thursday. Elijah was out of town visiting an old friend. Grace had picked up a night shift, so I was alone. The apartment felt colder than usual, though the thermostat read the same. I tried to ignore the flickering light in the hallway, the subtle tap-tap-tap that had started around midnight. Probably the radiator, I told myself, or the cat upstairs. Still, I couldn't sleep. Around 2:45 a.m. I got up to get water. The kitchen tiles were freezing under my feet. As I passed the mirror in the hallway, I saw something that made me stop. My reflection wasn't moving. I froze, stared at it. I lifted my right hand. It lifted the left. Then it smiled. I stumbled back, heart racing, and the glass cracked. A thin, jagged split from top to bottom, as though something had pressed from the inside. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I locked myself in the bedroom and texted Grace. Something's wrong, it's here. No reply. I called her, straight to voicemail. Then came a knock, 3 soft taps on the front door. I stayed frozen under the covers, barely breathing. Another knock. Then silence. I forced myself to move. I crept toward the door, every instinct screaming not to, but I had to know. I looked through the peephole. No one, just the hallway, but something was off. The hallway was tilting, slanting slightly to the left, like reality itself was leaning. The light at the end flickered violently, then popped, plunging everything into shadows. And then I saw it, standing at the far end, too tall, too thin. Its head tilted unnaturally, and though it had no face, I knew it was watching me. I stumbled back. My breath came out in shallow gasps. I grabbed my phone again, shaking hands trying to dial Grace. But just before I pressed call, my phone buzzed. A message from Grace. Only it wasn't Grace. There was no name, no contact photo, just a number I didn't recognize. The message said, "She's not Grace anymore." I dropped the phone, and from behind me, inside my apartment, I heard my name, spoken in my mother's voice.